Well, a very good afternoon to you on this 13th day of national lockdown in South Africa. My name is Mark Long and I'm rector of the parish of St Andrew in Newlands, Cape Town. I've been reflecting on today's Eucharist readings, and the reading from Isaiah and from the Psalm stood out. Both Isaiah 50 and Psalm 70 talk about God as our deliverer, God who comes to save us, to set us free, to release us from people in particular who seek our destruction. Obviously it has relevance in terms of the present pandemic, this virus that has the potential to take life, and certainly in terms of our seeking to deal with it, creates a substantial amount of suffering in many people's lives, certainly economically, but also to a degree relationally, as we find ourselves locked down and having to get on either with ourselves if we live alone, have to get on with those that if we don't live alone, that we're living with. And those are all spaces in which we discover something of the constriction that this virus has brought upon us. I'm reminded of somebody in my first parish who had a vehicle with a sticker on the back that said, "This car is protected by Psalm 91. That worked for many years, until one day, of course, the vehicle was stolen. My point in telling you that story is both in terms of God's protection and God's deliverance. I think at times we can be quite simplistic about how we interpret God's presence in our lives. And the simplisticness of it is this expectation that somehow God will wave a magic wand over our lives and we will be magically set free, or that God somehow magically puts a bubble of protection around a vehicle because we claim Psalm 91 over it. Reality is we're called to a simple faith, one in which we do truly trust that God will deliver, that God will protect, that God is present in our lives. But part of moving from a simplistic outlook to a more simple outlook is actually recognizing that God has given us resources in which to enable that deliverance, that protection, to happen. Had that particular person actually used a resource that they had to take out insurance, replacing that vehicle would have been a whole lot easier. And my suspicion is that God has given us a lot of resources. So often we just fail to recognize them. And so there is a level to which we kind of have this misdirected hope that God will just magically sort issues out. But I'd really encourage us to reflect on what those resources are. The virus, as it's impacted on us, as this long lockdown impacts on us, we all hope for a return to what life was like before. But if we consider what life was like before, certainly economically it wasn't wonderful. Unemployment levels were high. They're going to be higher. It's going to be worse. But it's an opportunity for really doing things differently, not just refurbishing the economy, but really transforming it. And true too, I think, for our relationships. And so much in our lives, as we look around the material things that we have or don't have, ultimately the relationships are deeply important. And I really would invite us to really embrace that, be it our relationship with God, be it our relationship with one another, with the world in which we live. Came across a lovely prayer today from a book called Daily Prayer by Patrick Tuama. And in closing, I'd like to share the collect for today with you. God of reconciliation, you demand much of us, inviting us to tell truths by turning towards each other. May we leave our trinkets where they belong and find our treasure by turning towards each other. Because you needed this, because we all need this. Amen.